Hey everyone, and welcome back to Practically Zero Waste, a podcast for making zero waste living as practical as possible. Nutritious food comes from nutritious soil, and Kathy Nesbitt has the answer for making your soil as rich and luxurious as possible. Today we talk everything from composting indoors with red wigglers to using gardening as therapy for a happier, healthier humanity. Ready to dig in deep and get pumped about compost? Let's go. How did this idea come around that you wanted to make a business making composters for people, specifically vermicomposters?
Yeah, so it's really kind of a long, lifelong journey, several stops along the way. But I would say the Reader's Digest idea of how Kathy's Crawley Composters and composting business came about was the landfill closed for the Greater Toronto Area in 2002, and I had a solution. 6 million people in the Greater Toronto Area, half living in condos and townhouses without space for outdoor composting or access to the green bin, an organic collection program. 2002 was pre-green bin. Again, 6 million people. Now we started shipping garbage to Michigan. Almost 200 garbage trucks every day, like honking transport trucks.
Is that still happening?
No, they have a solution now, but that went on for at least 10 years.
Yikes. Oh my gosh.
Yikes. So, I had a solution. I was really driven. And when I started my business, oh my gosh, my goal was worms in every living space, every apartment, every classroom, not just every school, every business, and every house. So we don't even need to truck this stuff around. Everybody look after your own waste.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the kernel of how it started. And in 2002, there was a garbage strike in Toronto. The union went on strike.
Okay, yeah.
And it's in the summer, of course. That's when you can be most effective for a garbage strike, right? It's going to smell. And there was so many things going on in 2002. Was introduced to a business course through the Women's Centre of York Region. It was a 6-month course to write a business plan. And so I turned to my husband. I said, I'm quitting my job. I'm taking this course. I'm starting a worm business.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And here we are 17 years later. Can you imagine? Selling worms by the pound.
Wow. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's so beautiful. I really feel on purpose with my business. And I started as a waste management tool.
Yeah.
But shortly realized that, yes, it's waste management, but it also is soil production.
Yeah. I like
that.
Right?
Like black gold production.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's, the worms and composting in general will close the loop in our food cycle.
Closing the loop. That's just such a magical phrase to me. I love it so much.
I think of the infinity sign, an 8 on its side.
Yeah.
And I think, we grow food, we eat the food, we feed the scraps to the worm or compost, and then we make compost, grow more food, eat the food, like just that goes around and around.
The cycle
continues. Away we go. And all that money that we spend on trucking that organic matter around could be spent on other things, like imagine healthcare, education, just a big party.
You have a wonderful vision of the future. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
What was your experience composting before your business began? Do you have a backyard compost or an apartment compost situation?
Absolutely. So I moved up to Bradford in 93 and bought a house and got a backyard and started composting. And so I've been composting since 93. And I used to bring home the food scraps from my coworkers.
Yeah, me too.
Because as you know, if you compost, the more you put in, the more you get out, the better your garden grows naturally.
Yeah.
Really little effort, and you don't have to put any money out. You just make compost with the scraps from your own food scraps.
Yeah, the stuff you were going to buy anyway. Exactly.
It's nature's magic show.
Why worms instead of just letting compost happen on its own?
Okay, why worms? Well, I think worm composting offers many benefits that regular outdoor composting does not, because it offers the solution. You can add the worms to your outdoor composter. We'll speed up the process. make a finer product. You can add the worms to an indoor space. So again, the folks that live in condos or townhouse, they might not have space for outdoor composting.
Right.
So composting allows them the opportunity to convert some of their scraps into soil and, to fertilize their houseplants.
Yeah.
For the listeners, I mean, you can grow fruit anywhere. It's magic.
So what's the process with worm composting? So you put your scraps in, you put your worms in, what happens?
Yeah, so any container will do. It's really creating the right environment for the worms. So just like regular composting, the worms require a carbon-nitrogen mix. The carbon is, or can be leaves, straw, cardboard, drink trays, shredded paper, your printer paper, newsprint, paper towel rolls, any combination of your paper products. I would say maybe leave out magazine.
Right, anything glossy.
And colorful flyers.
Okay.
But otherwise, whatever you have. And then you add your some soil in, regular soil from outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
You're adding the soil for the microbes.
Oh, okay.
The red wigglers are not soil dwellers, but they do require some soil for the little critters that are doing the work.
Okay.
They're doing the heavy lifting, like they're breaking it down for the worms. And then the worms are kind of the cleanup crew. They come along and, now their little bug friends have broken it down, so now the worms can get there.
Okay.
It's I keep saying magic. It's wonderful.
What do worms eat? Everything?
Oh, right. Yeah. So what do they eat? Okay. So here's a kind of a list of what they eat. All of your fruit and veg, coffee, tea, pasta, rice, beans, grains, plant clippings, cereal. What stays out? Much shorter list. No meat, no dairy, no sauce, and no greasy products.
Right. You wouldn't be able to drain the fat off of something into the compost.
If it was fried at all, I would say just leave it out. But you can put cooked vegetables as long as they don't have butter or sauce on them.
Okay.
Same with your cooked pasta and rice. If you have extra, as long as it doesn't have salt or oil or anything on it.
Yeah. Okay. So they eat pretty much everything.
Yeah, pretty much anything natural. You can put the odd slice of bread in. I do a lot of school workshops, so I generally say leave out citrus and leave out bread at schools because, it might overwhelm the bin.
Oh, okay.
Now, when you're starting your worm bin, you start with kind of a goodly amount of paper, so you don't need to add paper every time.
Oh, okay. That's just kind of a base.
Right, and where the worms live. So your materials, your soil, your paper, your water, eggshells, that's mixed together. And then your worms are added in. They'll make their way into the bedding. And then when you're feeding your food scraps, you bury the food scraps into the bedding. And that's so you don't get fruit flies.
Well, that's great.
Kind of important.
Yes. Do you find you have a hard time selling people on the worms?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The challenge with a worm composting business is the worms. Really, people understand the idea of, composting their scraps and all of that. And then when they might not hear that it's indoor, and they say, well, what do I do with the worms in the winter?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say, it's indoor year-round, ideally, because the worms are temperature sensitive.
Okay.
And then people will be afraid. And then, I really think that it's when people understand that the worms aren't going to get out of the bin unless they're being mistreated, right? Like, they can crawl out because there's holes in it. Like, you need airflow, you need the right temperature, which is room temperature, 16 to 28.
Yeah.
And you need the right humidity, so about 75% moisture.
Okay.
A little bit acidic, but you balance the acidity with eggshells.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so the worms will stay in, and then I tell people, and this is true, worms have 5 hearts each.
Oh.
There's a lot of worms, 800 to 1,000 in a pound. That's a lot of hearts. and it's a lot of love, and people, words have energy. And when I say that, people soften. They're like, oh, like imagining all those hearts in the worms. It's just like, oh, wow.
Okay.
It's an amazing thing. And worms are hermaphrodites, meaning male and female. They have phenomenal reproduction. They're a food source for many creatures in the wild.
Yeah.
They have a huge role to play. So once we can understand the role, like I was afraid of worms before starting my business.
What? How on earth did you get over that?
What am I going to start a business in? What am I afraid of? No. It didn't feel like that. But I saw, how it came about was the worms kind of kept coming to me. When I moved to Bradford, a teacher friend asked me to look after her worm bin for the summer.
What?
And I was like, I knew the value of compost. I was an avid gardener. I love compost. So I was like, okay, worm compost must be great too, but I don't want to have worms in my house, just like you asked.
Yeah.
Right? So then I was like, oh, no, I think we should do things ourselves. So I was like, okay, let me try this. It was horrible. I was a fruit fly farmer because I would throw my food just in and close the bin quick. I didn't do it properly.
Right.
But it's fine for the worms, right? The fruit flies are mere decomposers.
That's true, yeah.
They just bug us, and we called them bugs, so they're just really doing their job, bugging us.
I know.
So I said after that summer that I would never do worm composting again. It's really funny how life goes. It's not up to us.
Yeah.
And I think that happened so that when people say to me, ew, what about, worms in the house? I don't want fruit flies, all these things. I can say, I get it. Believe it or not, I was afraid of worms too.
Yeah.
And then I started to do research into the worms because I got a job at a group home. I mean, it's a big long story how I really got into this.
Yeah.
But once I started to research the worms, I discovered the red wigglers, and I'll talk about that in a second.
Sure.
The type of worm. So the red wigglers eat about half their weight per day once they're established.
Oh my gosh.
They turn, garbage in air quotes into gold for planting, right? So food waste, soil production, therefore food security. It's the 10-step diet.
Yeah.
Make your own soil, grow your own food. That's pretty secure.
I love that. Yeah.
And then, if you're, going really old school, then if you preserve and can and learn how to cook and
Yeah.
So there are thousands of types of worms.
Okay.
Only about 4 that are ideal for worm composting.
Okay.
And we're looking for surface dwellers. They'll live in a container. The worms that come out when it rains, the night crawler.
And the robins come and eat them.
And the robins love it, yes. It's spring, hallelujah.
Yeah.
So those worms, those Canadian night crawlers, or, dew worms, they live below the frost line. So they go, 4 to 6 feet below the surface and come up at night to draw their food into their burrow. They're vertical feeders. They would be very unhappy in a container.
Oh, because of how deep they go.
Correct. And they don't eat nitrogen. So they would eat the paper or the leaves, whatever you were using for bedding, but they wouldn't eat the carbon or the food scraps. And I believe they would be so stressed in the container that they probably would just be trying to get out.
Ooh, right. So you have to, you can't, so it's not a matter of, I would like to be a worm composter. I'm going to go and pick whatever kind of worms that I want and just start them on my own. You should get the right kind of worms, is what you're saying. Get
the right kind of worms so that, so you're set up to be successful. You can, of course you could try getting the worms outside because they are abundant after a rain. It's fine. But it won't work.
Especially if you're going to bring them in your house.
There are also different temperature worms. So, they live below the frost line, so they like it cool. You find those in pot machines. I kind of want to release them all, but okay. Right at the gas station for bait.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes.
Right, and you buy them and you put them in the fridge to keep them cool. The red wigglers are a little bit heat loving, so they like it 16 to 28 Celsius.
Okay, so you mentioned red wigglers. Are those the right kind?
Red wigglers, yes.
Yeah.
There are many systems on the market, and we do have a wonderful system called the Living Composter.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your container.
Yeah, it's new. It's the very latest in worm composting, made in Ontario, which is beautiful. And it doubles as a piece of functional furniture. And I love that it doesn't have worm in the title.
Yes.
It is a worm bin, but it's called the Living Composter. So it doesn't say worm in the title. So people don't have to worry about, I'm afraid of worms and all of that. It's called the Living Composter. It's a stool. It's different.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll put a link to that in the description box because people need to see how cool this piece of furniture is. I've seen it and it's so awesome. It's so trendy looking.
Yeah, it really is beautiful. And how that came about, there was a bigger system called the Worm Chalet. I loved it. I mean, I still have a couple. And it's a 3-layer system. I thought it was super cute, but it kind of looked like a beehive, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
A big gray thing. And now, next to the living composter, I'm like, ooh, it was a big workhorse.
Okay.
You know, it was big. It was nice for production. If somebody was looking for lots of worm castings, the worm chalet was beautiful. Way to capture your liquid. So how the tower composters work? You generally feed one tray at a time.
Yeah.
Holes in the bottom of each tray. So when the first tray fills up, you will set up the next tray. And then the worms will migrate up through the holes in the bottom.
Oh.
So it's self-harvesting.
Okay.
There's usually a spigot and a little, at the bottom would be the basin where you would collect your liquid. You can easily drain it off with the spigot. The liquid that comes out of the bottom, like sometimes people get very excited about compost tea.
Yes.
Like for the garden, not for drinking.
No, of course. Yeah, don't drink it. Don't drink it.
Yeah, and so I say with caution, it's a wonderful way to manage the liquid. So it's a wonderful way to make sure that your system doesn't get too wet. The liquid that comes out of the bottom, if it smells bad, it's become anaerobic. Plants always require aerobic bacteria to grow. So just meaning with oxygen, right? And
so
anaerobic is what we require, right? Our bodies, aerobic exercise, good for cardiovascular, all of that. That's what the plant organisms need as well. They need aerobic.
So when it's been sitting in the bottom of the composter and it just doesn't have enough airflow down there, and so it becomes anaerobic?
Yeah, so you kind of just use your nose. If it smells bad, you discard it. You don't use it for your plants.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't smell bad, then you can dilute it and water your plants and have liquid fertilizer.
That's great. Very cool.
So, it's like a way to manage your moisture and perhaps be usable.
And just another thing that's, not being wasted. Look at that.
I know. It's so wonderful. With composting and worm composting, I say whatever you have that's biodegradable, put it in your bin, put it in your thing, and let the worms get to it. It may take a long time, like cabbage. Wow, cabbage takes forever.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's some tricks that you can do to speed up your composting process.
Right.
Chopping your scraps in smaller pieces speeds it up. There's more exposed surface. You can freeze your scraps, and then when you thaw it, it changes the molecular structure of the peel, so it breaks down. If anybody has ever frozen a tomato and thought, okay, I'm going to have a tomato sandwich in February.
Right.
And then they take their tomato out and put their toast down, and then their tomato, when the tomato thaws, you can't slice it anymore. It's not tomato soup. Right?
Yeah.
So that's because the peel has been compromised.
Well, that's a great idea for anybody who's just trying to decompose things a little bit faster, even with a backyard composter.
As far as the moisture, so the moisture gets released quicker after you freeze and then thaw. If you had a lot of scraps, I hear from people, well, we have way more scraps than that. So one way you can add more scraps to your bin is kind of getting some of that juice out and then pouring it off rather than putting that in your worm bin.
Totally.
Right? And then you can add more weight in solids into your worm bin, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Well, this all sounds very practical. Do you find that people can pick this up really quickly and it's not too much of a challenge? Or does it take a lot of time to get used to it?
No, it doesn't take a lot of time. I want to say that it's like anything. You need to put some effort into worm composting. So because it's done inside, you do want to put a little more effort in than if you're doing it outside and you're doing it outside for waste management.
Yes.
Right? You're just tossing stuff in your black earth machine and you don't care. You're just tossing it in there to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's different reasons why people are doing composting. If most people that take on worm composting, they know the value of the worm compost, or they're environmental and they live in an apartment and they really want to dispose of the soil, but they still took on worm composting because they wanted to be environmental.
Yes.
Because I said, look at that. If you have any gardening friends, now you've got your shopping done.
Totally, yeah.
Right? You just put that in a nice package or a nice little glass thing, make a nice label, and boom, they got worm poo.
Yeah.
And they'll be so happy. Right? Because it's valuable, and people that know that it's valuable. And because what makes the worm compost so valuable, like compost is great, worm compost is greater, and the reason it's greater, it's a little bit more processed by nature. The castings are more readily available as plant food to be taken up by the plant.
Yeah, exactly.
When we look after the soil looks after the plant. People ask me if I'm a gardener,
Mm-hmm.
and I do garden, but I'm really not a gardener. I'm a soil maker. I look after my soil, and then I just stand back after I plant seeds. I don't have to do any work.
Amazing.
It's really, last year, my goodness. And because, I've had my business 17 years, so there's a lot of overs that get tossed. Okay, this may be lesser grade compost that we might not sell. It's not that stuff. It just gets dumped in our garden.
Yep. Yeah, well, totally.
And it's beautiful. Like, I don't mind at all. And so last year I grew, just out of the compost. I didn't plant butternut squash, but I got at least a dozen over 10-pound butternut squashes.
Incredible.
And my prize one was 15 pounds.
Holy.
Wow. Well, like, and dense, it's just like so nutrient dense and wonderful.
Yeah, so when plants are taking in nutrients and not in just plain old soil that has had the same thing growing over and over again without any other contribution from other plants and other decay, like they're not going to be as nutrient dense. Is that right?
That's the truth. I mean, they're saying that a broccoli from 1950, today we would have to eat like 19 or 20 broccoli heads. Not possible to eat the nutrients that we used to get from one broccoli.
Really?
So what happens when the plants are growing? The nutrients are, just as you said, the nutrients are coming out of the soil into the plant. If we do anything other than compost those scraps, we're robbing the soil.
Yeah.
So our soil is becoming deplete with each rotation. It's becoming less and less unless we're adding the nutrients in naturally, not any of those chemical things. I don't even want to say a name, but it's MG, by the way. Because people are like, oh, I just use that. And it's like, no, that's just chemical. If it's blue, it's not natural unless it's a blueberry. I think you know what I'm talking about.
I absolutely understand that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, like, with big commercial farms, like, what are they supposed to do to make... So, yes, we all need to eat, and, society has developed this process of having a massive farm that is all growing one thing in one field, and maybe they do crop rotation, but that nutrients isn't going back into the soil. So, aside from using chemical fertilizers, what can we get massive farms to be doing again?
We know, without getting political, I don't want this to be too heavy because I have a wonderful solution, and my solution is the individual doing what they do. But as far as, the large-scale monocropping and all the chemicals, it's all tied to business, right?
Yeah.
There's some large companies that are dominating the agri-field. If anyone's interested in knowing more about this, they should look up Elaine Ingham, Life in the Soil Foodweb. It's all about what we can do. It's all about our health. If our food is our fuel, and as long as we keep on poisoning the soil, we're poisoning ourselves.
Exactly.
It's a cuckoo system. The system is really broken all around. We're learning more about our own microbiome. I don't know if you've heard this word as yet, but it's our own bacteria and all the bugs that we have. We actually are more bug than we are human. We're more microorganisms. So, when we have something going on in our belly, diseases that we have, it's because our microbiome is out of whack. You change your diet and start eating clean. Oh my gosh, you don't even crave that stuff anymore because you don't have that imbalance of microbiology in your belly.
So do you think that we're just so detached from where our food even comes from that the concept of depleting soil of its nutrients doesn't even cross our minds anymore, I imagine, because to think that where the nutrients in the broccoli comes from is the soil is kind of a foreign concept.
Foreign because, of course, broccoli just comes from the grocery store. What do you mean? And
Exactly.
it's already cello wrapped. Like, why do they wrap it in...
single-use plastic. Don't get me started on that.
Right, another top. And, again, this is really a hopeful, something very, very hopeful. It's the worms. When I started my worm business, I heard that a pound of worms and their descendants could transform a ton of organic waste in a year. Wow. And then I heard that the average Canadian family produces a ton of organic waste in a year. And I was like, oh my gosh, every family needs a pound of worms.
Yes, they do.
And I'm just the one to put a pound of worms in every house. And then, and then I started doing eco fairs and, home shows, and wherever I could exhibit, I would be there. And I realized very quickly, it's adults and I'm afraid of worms. And it's like, wow. So that's why doing school workshops is especially important, I think, in my business.
Working with kids is so valuable because they get it. They get that this is something that's important, that plants are important, that nature is important, and they have this other sense of value.
They have this sense of wonder, and they do understand. And they're looking for the worm bin. And that was my goal when I started. So 17 years, I think. I'm still meeting, teachers and people that have never heard of this. And I'm like, just imagine for a second. I mean, even if we started today, imagine how wonderful. But imagine if 17 years ago, every school in Toronto had worms.
Yeah.
Then all of those kids would know about it.
Yeah.
And their parents would hear about it.
Yeah.
I'm very sad because worms are not sexy.
No.
And 17 years, there's not many growers still in Canada.
Really?
There's still not, you still have difficulty getting worms sometimes.
Really? So how quickly do they reproduce?
Well, under ideal conditions, they will double in number in about 3 to 5 months.
Oh.
Which is, it sounds like a long time, but it really is not when you think, if somebody was, again, back to people, they'll say, well, if we're a family of 4, how many worms do we need? And it's really not based on a per person. It's a lifestyle. You imagine vegetarian and vegans will produce way more than meat and potatoes, folks. If you're preparing your food at home, if you're vegetarian or meat and potatoes versus eating in a restaurant or packaged food, right, you're going to produce more. So many things to consider. So it's really not. And then I say to people, or if they say, well, we produce way more than that, then I say, but you live in a condo. So all of your scraps right now are going in landfill.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of your questions earlier was about the landfill. What's the difference? Why not just put the food scraps in the landfill?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the landfill, what happens is, at the end of the day, once they finished adding, the daily the garbage truck loads, they run over it with tractors. They put fill on top. They, run over it with tractors to compress the air out and push it all down. Oh. So it actually is a big anaerobic. Then it starts seeping methane coming out of. So when we put organic matter in the landfill, it's actually bad because the methane will come out of the landfill.
Yes, and so the methane is what is rapidly increasing the speed of greenhouse gas emissions.
Correct.
And
there's many sources. I get that there's cars and cows are a big source.
Oh, absolutely.
And, why put something in the landfill that we could actually turn into?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. It's such a useful thing to be able to decompose all of our food scraps and be mindful too of how much food scrap you're actually producing. Like if there's something that when you chop up a red bell pepper or something and you throw a good chunk of edible pepper away and not just the seeds and the stem, like change that habit. Make sure that you're using every part of something before you even get to the composting stage. Like I know baby steps for people and take it one step at a time because I don't want you to get overwhelmed and stop. But make these choices over and over and over again to do something positive for the planet. And they're all so beautiful and simple.
So simple, and it really is satisfying. And I find the more things that I add in, I do have a fairly eco lifestyle where there's always room for improvement. But it just feels so great. I just started making my own coconut milk.
Oh, wow.
And I was making almond milk, but then I was feeling bad about all the almond pulp, although I did make energy balls, and it's all in my freezer and all of that. I just find that it's not really as usable with the when you make coconut milk, which I feel like an old hippie or something.
No, I love it. I love hippies. So go on.
I didn't make coconut flour.
Oh.
So as long as you squeeze, I have a Vitamix, or if you have a super blender, you can do this, and then you squeeze it through your milk bag, and then you have delicious milk it's wonderful milk, and then you make coconut flour that you can make, bread or cake. You can add it into your smoothies for bulk.
Are you using dried coconut, or what are you using to make coconut milk?
I'm using just shredded coconut. Yeah. Somehow, I have a sprouting, or I don't know if you know, but I have a sprouting business as well.
Okay.
So I buy the beans, certified organic beans, and this company had 25-pound bags of shredded coconut. So I was like, oh, well, coconut's healthy. I'll get a bag of coconut. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I have a life supply of coconut now. What am I going to do with this? So then I was like, Googled what I could do, and milk came up. And I was like, oh, I'm making my own almond milk. And I know almonds they're not the most environmental nut.
Yeah. They take a lot of water.
I understand there's a lot of challenges with the growing of some of the superfoods. You know, that is another reason why we need to grow our own. Like we have to, or not have, but it would be really great if people made their soil, so then they could grow their own food and look after ourselves. You know, this is another whole topic, but I really must touch on this while we're talking.
Totally.
Like we don't have health care in Canada. We have sick care.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah, so it's not preventative. It's a Band-Aid.
Preventative. Nobody talks about food. Nobody talks about food. And when you go to the hospital, the food they give you is food-like substances. It's horrible.
I know.
Packaged stuff and
and convenient because the hospitals, they have such a strain on them to begin with. But you're right. If there was more work towards preventative measures.
Food is our fuel, and food can cure us.
Yes, absolutely.
Hippocrates said it.
Yes.
Take food thy medicine, and medicine thy food. I mean, again, this isn't a health and wellness talk. It's about waste, but you know, it really is all related. There's stats now. I think it was Guelph and York Region just did surveys last year on residential food waste.
Okay.
And they got around the same statistics that people are throwing away about 25% of the groceries that they bring home.
That's insane.
So I'll give you the visual. So
that's insane.
Bring 4 bags home, might as well just leave 1 bag at the curb, because that's what we're doing.
Drives me insane. Like, what a waste of money.
God, why are we throwing our money away? Money, and then the environment, and then, you know, all the greenhouse gases for the trucks to come around and collect that stuff.
And being produced in the landfill with the methane that's coming off of them.
Like, and that food grew somewhere, and it came from somewhere, and, like, just the whole thing is, it's all broken.
Yeah.
It comes back to growing our own and slowing down.
Slowing down, totally.
Slow down, get out there. There's actually there's antidepressant microbes in the soil.
Wow.
There's a British study came out last year, and it talked about gardeners are actually happy people because there's microbes in the soil that make them happy.
And because they're outside, they're in the sunshine, they're appreciating what they're doing because they get to eat the food that they've grown themselves, and so there's a value being placed on something instead of just buying it at the store. Oh my gosh, I can totally see why the gardener is the happiest person.
You know, gardeners are a hopeful lot, because to plant a seed and then wait 2 months or 3 months for it to produce something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have all my little seeds started for my garden, and there's a couple of them that are seeds that I saved from last year, from a basil plant and from a cilantro plant, and I planted those first, and they still hadn't grown, so I was thinking of just dumping out that soil and using it for something else, and the other day it sprouted, and I was just so excited. So, yeah, you have to be hopeful. You have to have so much.
You have to be hopeful as a gardener.
Mm-hmm.
And farmers. I mean, farmers are doing great work.
Farmers are champions.
You know, they're just doing what they know, and they are good stewards of the land. It's just, you know, those big, giant companies they have slick salespeople.
They do. And because it's supply and demand, like you're just supplying the demand, and they need more cauliflower, so you're going to grow more cauliflower. And if bugs are your problem, you're going to find a pesticide to kill that, and be able to fill the demand for it. So it's just it's a broken system, and it's
a broken system. And now the challenge is that the chemicals that they're creating, glyphosate is one. It's insidious. It goes right into the plant.
I know.
It goes right into the plant. So if any pests eat that plant, the bug will die.
Well, same with humans. Like, what is that list of the dirty dozen? Do you know what's on that list?
The fruits and vegetables, it changes, but it's potatoes,
strawberries, apples.
I know those two are on. I don't know off the top of my head, but it kind of,
I'll put a link to that as well in our show notes.
Yeah, I would, you know, just so that people can know. I bought a bag of potatoes. Oh my gosh. And most of them were black on the inside. I'm like, oh yeah, the dirty dozen.
Right,
When
yeah.
can I start growing my potatoes again?
'Cause yeah.
My homegrown.
I grew potatoes last year for the first time, and it was the most thrilling thing to reach down into this dirt and pull out a sweet potato. I was just blown away that I had grown a potato. So,
So exciting.
man.
That's
And I
why,
just grew that in a pot in the city. So
wow,
anybody
that's
can
why,
grow potatoes.
that's why if we can introduce children to making soil, but like composting, but also the gardening piece. Oh my gosh, it's so wonderful.
Because they have that wonder, yeah. And that's what gardening is. It's just wonderful. You're amazed that something can grow.
There's a oh my gosh, a wonderful little documentary about a garden in northern Manitoba. It's called "And This Is My Garden." And this teacher, like, it's really hostile environment. Every year she gives the kids seed magazines at the beginning of the year, and she says, what do you want to grow?
Yeah.
And then they got money for a greenhouse, whatever. So the whole year, whatever it is that they want to grow, even if it doesn't grow there, I mean, that's all part of the learning. Like, okay, that doesn't grow here. So, I mean, now they're probably growing stuff that grows there or will grow in the greenhouse. But then at the end of the year, they have a community supper from all the stuff that was grown in the garden.
Lovely. I mean, and it's all local and seasonal and wow, that's my goal this summer.
And it helps depression because people are community, right? You can't be on your technology when your hands are in the dirt.
Oh my gosh, go on. I love it. There's just an epidemic of an epidemic of mental health issues. If we could just get back to the earth. I know that just sounds a little cheesy, but to be able to get your hands in the dirt and to be outside and to have to maintain something, so there's something that needs you outside, you have to go out and you have to take care of it in order to have the end result, have the fruits of your labor. To have nature therapy.
In the States, in prisons, they had some very successful vermicomposting projects. 5-pound worm boxes. Each inmate would, not every inmate, but the garden group would look after a 5-pound box of worms. Once a week, they would go and tend to their worms. They'd wash eggshells, crush them, chop the food, make sure that the worms were okay, harvest them, and then to be able to start gardening. Those folks that came out of prison after doing a gardening and a worm composting project, they were gentler beings. They had a skill when they got out. They were ready to be integrated back into society. Can
Incredible. I love that. I love that. It
like,
should be a form of therapy. It is.
They could maybe get a job at a gardening center because they know what to do. It really does soften people. And I just think there's so many ways that these worms, they have so much, and just composting in general, but the worms add that extra, like, you have to keep the worms alive.
Yeah, it's like having a pet, but it's also a very productive pet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a pet that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I do a lot of school workshops, and when teachers have a worm bin in the class, then, they say that if they start in September, they start at the beginning of the year, they can go through a whole cycle from setup to harvest, and maybe even two. Yeah. But then they can take that soil, grow a plant for Mother's Day or Father's Day, and say, wow, we grew that soil. Or they could sell the soil as a fundraiser.
Yeah.
There's just so many opportunities.
I love it. There's so much good stuff to come from this. Anyone inspiring you in the eco-friendly community lately?
David Suzuki ongoing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that guy just keeps going on, and despite, what he's in his 80s, despite, people criticizing that he jet sets around and all of these things, he's doing really good work. And he's a huge idol of mine. Elizabeth May, I'm so happy that she's elected and sitting in the House.
Yeah,
she's a huge, green advocate. She does have integrity, and I have a vision board, and Elizabeth May is Prime Minister, so I'm hoping that comes true.
Yeah, cool. And it's springtime, so what are you looking forward to most with your gardening?
I'm just looking forward to getting out there. I've got some raised beds. Every year I try something different. Last year, my husband made me a pallet garden, just a pallet on its end, and you seal the bottom, and then you can grow lettuce in a pallet garden. And I just like experimenting with different systems to see, like, how easy it is. You know, you just get a pot, you can grow a tomato in there.
Oh, yeah.
So at least you have something. Maybe you can't grow all your food, but imagine if you can just grow some peas or, you know, some potatoes, like you said. Like, it's so satisfying. You know, if you throw, I know you know, but if you throw an eye of, you know, some old potatoes that are starting to grow already,
if they start to
toss
sprout.
those in your compost pile, you'll get potatoes.
That's so fun.
Nothing to be done.
Yeah, not in your worm bin, but in your compost pile outside. Yeah.
So couples will come to pick up worms, and it's really interesting. Maybe the man is really interested in the worms. He can't wait to get his worm bin going, and the wife has her hand on the doorknob, you know, to get out of the house. Yeah. or the opposite way. The woman's like, I've wanted to get worms for so long, or whatever, and the man's like, I'm just supporting her. It's really interesting. And then when I, you know, talk to them and I say, you know, because when you come in my house, you're actually in my kitchen. Yeah. So I say, you know, can you smell anything? And, you know, if I'm cooking, hopefully they'll say it smells good. And I say, you know, there's 2 worm bins in this kitchen.
And they're like, what?
Yeah, and then I go, come on over here, and I talk to the one who's not in favor of the worms, because the other ones, they're already in. Yeah. So I call them over, and I open the thing, and, you know, I don't manage my worm bin properly. Like, you know, you're supposed to bury everything. Once you have the microbial life in there, once you've got everything going and the environment is right, you don't need to really bury your scraps. You can toss everything in, and then there's no smell. It just, everything works. Wow. But it is a good practice to bury.
Of course, yeah. Fruit flies, so right?
Yeah. My thing, and you see rotting food, and it looks like it should smell bad.
Right. Yeah.
But they're like, and then I go, you know, can you smell anything? And then I say, I don't know, you know, do you have a good sense of smell? Oh yeah, I have a good sniffer. No, and then they get in close, and I go, what now? What about? Can you smell? No, it just smells earthy.
Wonderful.
Good. So don't worry. Yeah, it's not going to smell. The worms aren't. And I say, if the worms, because they're like, oh, are the worms going to get out? And I said, they're eating half their weight per day. They don't have time to go sightseeing, and they don't have eyes. No point. And if they crawl out of the bin, something's wrong in the bin. It's not wet enough outside the bin. They're going to just die outside the bin. Yeah. Sad. Like, that's sad, but they just dry up. You know, like, it's not a big deal, except that's sad that they left the bin. And when people say to me, I don't want fruit flies, I say, have you ever had fruit flies? And they say yes. And I say, have you had a worm bin? And they say no. And I say, then you know that the fruit flies don't come from the worm bin. Yeah. They come from the food that you're putting in the worm bin. So some maintenance is required. You need to maybe rinse some of your scraps that you don't wash, your bananas, your orange, your melon, because the peels, the fruit fly eggs are on the outside of all of your fruits.
Oh, interesting.
But you eat the apple peel, or you eat the pear.
Yeah, so you just wash it.
Hopefully you wash it first.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the fruit flies, people. It's everyone that touched your fruit that you want to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. The number of hands that have touched your vegetables at the grocery store before you're going to eat it. It's right. That's what you're washing off. Like, you can't wash off pesticides necessarily, but you're washing off all the dirty fingers that have touched it before you did.
Yeah, I actually do wash my vegetables now in a soap. Just to get because you're right that, you know, the pesticides now, as I was saying about, you know, glyphosate that goes right into the plant, the chemicals now are made. They're not water soluble. They're meant to be.
No, they are deep in your potato. They're not washing off.
Right? They're not meant to just wash off.
Yeah, which is why if you can afford to buy organic, or if you're shopping at, you know, your farmer's market and they offer organic farm vendors, totally go for those, especially for the Dirty Dozen, which is a list we'll link in the show notes, because those are the ones that have the pesticides deep within them, because those fields have been sprayed for decades now.
They need that, right? Our fields are chemical dependent now.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you took away those pesticides, crops would suffer immensely now, because there's no natural way to defend themselves.
Correct. You know, back to that, and what do we do about agriculture? So here's what Elaine Ingham says. Okay. If you see a patch of dirt where nothing is growing, there's no life there. That is dirt. Yeah. And then the first thing to grow is weeds, because weeds need a lot of bacteria, so they need a lot of food. So the bacteria feeds them. So at least there's life there. Like you go, oh, look at that weed patch. At least there's life. There's something there that's allowing those plants to grow. And then you go up the chain, you go, next is annuals. So they also need, right? You look at your tomatoes, you got to give them a lot of food. You got to put a lot of compost and a lot of stuff because they're big feeders, right? They're growing quickly, and then they need to produce those fruits. And so same with your vegetables, your annual flowers. Yeah. They're bacteria dominant. Yeah. And then you get into grasses, perennials, shrubs. Now you're getting more fungi dominant. Like now you need more fungi and less bacteria, but still some bacteria. And then right at the very end is the old growth forest.
Oh, beautiful.
Right? The miles and miles and miles of mycelium, which are the fungus, like the roots.
Yeah.
Fungus roots.
Incredible.
It's the internet of the soil.
Huge network.
I really, I say this often that we know lots about the stars. I know there's lots we don't know. There's lots about the ocean that we know, and I know there's more to learn. But we know so little about the soil where our food grows and that which sustains us. Yeah. We know so little, and I don't understand why we're not, focused more there. If we looked at our food, that would look after a lot of our sick care.
I think so.
We'll create all new jobs that are healthy and people will be vibrant and lovely.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Where can people go to learn more about you and your business?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. So my website is kathyscomposters.com.
Okay.
So Kathy with an S, composters with an S, and .com.
Perfect.
And I do a lot of events. So on my website, there's an events tab, and I travel around, well, Southern Ontario mostly, but I travel around a lot. And people want to come to an event, I'm happy to answer questions there. They can see my living composter and my worms. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Very good.
April is Earth Month.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited.
We deal in earthworms, and they could be the mascot for Earth Month.
There you go.
And the first week of May is International Compost Awareness Week, the first week of May.
Really? Okay. That's great.
Yeah, there really are some wonderful big projects going on. I get asked all the time, can this be scaled up? Yes. Remember, my focus is the individual.
Yeah.
I really want the individual to take action, look after their own waste, and not be dependent on the government for that part. If we look after our own waste, then we're going to buy less.
Yeah.
We'll only buy what we can dispose of, for sure. I just think that all around it's going to create a more local flavor where wouldn't it be wonderful if the whole community had gardens, and then I had excess tomatoes, my neighbor had more spinach, and someone else had kale, and then we're like swapping it up. Would be so great.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I feel like compost is the epitome of zero waste, isn't it? Like it's just the most sustainable thing.
It is the most sustainable thing. Just about everything is compostable.
Yeah.
All natural things like wood chips, it takes a while, but they will break down.
Yeah.
Leaves, and
it
was just amazing. So if we leave it long enough, nature's going to be fine.
I know, but we gotta slow down on nature where it's taking its toll.
Yeah, we really do need to be mindful. Just be mindful of all the things that we're doing, because once we're mindful, then we're not walking around blind,
throwing our coffee cup
right?
into
just making random purchases and doing stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
And back to our microbiome in our gut.
Yeah.
70% of our immune system is in our belly.
Interesting.
So if we're stressed and we're not relaxed when we're eating, then we're not, we need to relax and digest. I think that's what the phrase is, relax and digest.
Wow.
If we're stressed, we're in fight or flight mode and we're not digesting. So our body's not getting what it needs nutrient-wise from the food that we're taking in.
Wow.
And that's probably another whole talk.
Oh my gosh, we should have like a mental health food related. I'm gonna look into something like that for the next episode. It's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Talking about compost and talking about gardening and talking about this circular system where we are what we eat, and so let's just make sure that it's the best stuff possible that we're putting into our bodies and putting into the soil. And
compost is the answer for everything in your garden.
Yes.
Too acidic, add compost.
Yeah.
Too alkaline, add compost. Yeah, bugs, add compost. I have had so much fun talking with you.
Thank you so much for making yourself available. This has been wonderful. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. If you want to learn more from Kathy, she has an immense amount of resources on her website, kathyscomposters.com. You can find lots of the resources we talked about today in the show notes, and you can always find me on Instagram at Elsbeth Callahan. If you have a question or an episode idea, you can send them to practicallyzerowaste@gmail.com, and if you send it as a voice memo, we'll answer the best ones during the podcast. We'd love it if you'd leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, subscribe for more content, like us on Spotify, and then get the heck outside and enjoy that brilliant spring weather. I know that's where I'll be. Have a good week, everyone, and talk to you soon.